Wow, times are changing. It's crazy to see how people before wanted to become nurse practitioners so badly, but now you're starting to see so many nurse practitioners going back to bedside, and times are changing for sure. So in this video, I'm going to be going over my reasoning on why many nurse practitioners are going back to bedside. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel, LifeofaPsychNP. If you're new to this channel, let me formally introduce myself. I'm Darty. I'm a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner, and in this channel, I go over several different subjects to educate the public about mental health, the ways to improve your lifestyle, topics related to nursing, nurse practitioners, and especially psychiatric nurse practitioners. If you are interested in any of these topics, feel free to subscribe. Make sure you like this video because it helps me out so much, and follow me on Instagram at LifeofaPsychNP. So, you probably clicked this video because you're interested in finding out why so many nurse practitioners are starting to leave their roles as providers and going back into the bedside RN space. And it's crazy to think because, like I mentioned earlier, that many people, all they wanted to do is become nurse practitioners. A lot of the times they weren't going to bedside and just skipping that whole process and going straight to being providers. And now so many people have changed their minds and started going from being nurse practitioners now back to being bedside, and times are constantly changing, and that's just kind of that trend right now. I don't know if it's going to continue, but that's something to constantly think about because with so many different changes happening in the world when it comes to the economy, when it comes to job market, when it comes to the pandemic, so many different other issues, but there's something to kind of think about. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I want to shed light on why many nurse practitioners are leaving bedside, or leaving their roles as providers and going back to bedside. And it's something to honestly think about because being a nurse practitioner isn't for everyone, and it's something that sometimes it might not be for you. So I'd rather shed light on it early on, just so you know in case these things might apply to you. So without further ado, let's go over my top 5 reasons why I think that many nurse practitioners are leaving their roles and going back to becoming a bedside RN. So let's go. So the very first reason why many nurse practitioners are leaving to go back to bedside is because of the pay. And yes, pay isn't everything, but at the same time, we have to do what we gotta do to make sure that our bills are paid. And in this instance, you have to think about certain situations where pay is huge. And sometimes as nurse practitioners, we get paid less than some bedside RNs. And depending on where you work and where you live, that's a huge difference. For example, when you're in Northern California, you could make upwards of $150,000 to $250,000 as a bedside RN. But as a nurse practitioner, it's pretty stagnant and it's pretty solid throughout the whole state of California. And where you're getting paid anywhere from $110,000 to $160,000. And yes, it's on the little higher end for psychiatric nurse practitioners, but in general, the whole population on all specialties across the board, it's still sometimes lower than being a bedside RN. And it's crazy to think that because of the responsibilities, because of our role, and so many other factors. And people are starting to realize that as nurse practitioners, I don't get paid as well as RNs. Why bust my butt to become a nurse practitioner when I can be getting paid more with sometimes even a better schedule and be a nurse? I don't know why I said nurse, but nurse. So yeah, definitely something to think about. So the second reason why I think that many nurse practitioners are leaving their roles and going back to becoming bedside RNs is job opportunities. I'm not saying there aren't as many jobs out there. Maybe that's the case, who knows? But what I'm saying is that there aren't any good job opportunities, or there are lower amount of job opportunities, which is not a good thing. So when you think about job opportunities, you're thinking about so many different factors: location, pay, compensation in terms of your package, what you're doing, job satisfaction. And yes, there may be jobs out there, but there are jobs that people don't necessarily want to do. And like I said, I'm talking about the whole specialty from family nurse practitioners, from going to women's health nurse practitioners, pediatric nurse practitioners, and psych nurse practitioners, or whatever the case is there are jobs out there. It's a matter of you wanting to move there, but at the same time, depending on where you move and depending on where you're at right now, that salary and that compensation package may differ tremendously. And that's something to think about. And yes, you can work in a job and just want to work there or whatever and have a job, but will you be satisfied? Will you like what you're doing? Is it a specialty if you're a family nurse practitioner? Is it something you actually want to do? Are you just doing rounds when you want to be in the hospital? Or when you're doing random stuff when you want to be in the outpatient setting, or whatever the case is? But there are not as many good job opportunities out there. And a lot of these nurse practitioners are starting to get more and more fed up with not being able to get these jobs. And just talking to some of my colleagues that were pediatric nurse practitioners or are pediatric nurse practitioners, it seems like just getting a job takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years on average for them, and which is crazy and it's mind-boggling because I had jobs lined up when I graduated, but it differs from specialty to specialty. And if these job opportunities aren't there, then who knows? Because you can get a job into a regular new grad NP position, but who knows if you're gonna like that job opportunity, and who knows if you're gonna even want to stay there. And if you're trying to look for another job and there are not that many roles, why stay at a job that you don't like and end up just going back to bedside? And that's what a lot of people are doing and transitioning into, which is, it just depends on the person. For me, it's crazy because I can't see myself going back to being a bedside RN, but who knows? Because like I said, everything is changing. So the third reason why I think that many nurse practitioners are going back to becoming bedside RNs is because of the stress of the job and having to do more work, frankly. So not only are you seeing patients, doing the whole physical exam or doing your whatever you're doing, but you're also documenting so much, and there's so much more documentation when it comes to being a provider compared to being a nurse. I'm not saying nurses don't document a lot, but what I'm just saying is the amount of documentation in my experience is way more as a provider compared to being a nurse. It doesn't happen to everyone, but I'm just taking my experience into consideration. And who knows, comment down below if you don't really do as much documentation as a nurse practitioner compared to being a bedside RN. So definitely want to hear about that. But in my experience, that's more. And the amount of patients you have to see depending on where you work and depending on your specialty, you're seeing tons and tons of patients. Just being in the outside outpatient NP as a psych NP setting, we're seeing anywhere from 15 to 20 patients, and I know some people see anywhere from upwards of 25 to 30, even 40 patients, which is crazy. And imagine having to document on all of that and the stress accompanied by all of those things. And that's what a lot of people are starting to realize, that they're going into this role and like, dang, I'm seeing so many patients. It's becoming so stressful because of just a different atmosphere, different environment, and different types of patients that you're seeing. Whether you're F&P side and you're seeing all of these complicated cases, or you're on the Psych NP side, you're seeing all of these complicated patients, and these interactions are a lot different, and you have to go home or have to document, and it just starts to become more and more stressful. Imagine doing that Monday through Friday, and sometimes people don't like what they do, and they end up thinking like, hey, is this even worth it? And at the end of the day, when you start to look at your compensation package, you start to look at your job satisfaction, and when you start to look at your stress levels, a lot of people are like, man, I was working bedside 3 days a week and I was chilling, working nights, and I'm making damn near the same. And that's something that many people, many nurse practitioners in general, are starting to realize, and it's crazy. So definitely something to think about. And that third point brings us up to our fourth point, which is very similar to what I was kind of mentioning towards the latter end of that third reason. And my fourth reason on why I think that many nurse practitioners are leaving their roles to becoming bedside RNs is because of the hours, one, and two is because of that decreased job satisfaction. So kind of building up from, or kind of expanding on reason number three, is a lot of these people because of being a nurse practitioner and being in a different role, and majority of the times being in an outpatient setting, is they're being in clinics, or they're in clinics that are Monday through Friday. Yeah, there are exceptions where people work weekends or longer hours, but for the most part, when you're looking at your 40-hour work week, majority of people are working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 or 8:30 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, or whatever the case is, and that's their role. And as opposed to being bedside RNs, where a lot of the times you're working 12-hour shifts, only 3 12s. Even if you're working mornings 7 to 7, it's perfect. So it's so many different things, and once you start to realize like you're more and more of your time is starting to be occupied by either seeing patients or going home and documenting, and just realizing of how intense it may be with seeing all these patients and having to give up so much of your life Monday through Friday, and just looking forward to the weekend because you're so stressed out and you're not really satisfied in your role during the Monday through Friday grind as a nurse practitioner. More and more people are realizing, like, is it even worth it? And like I said, then you start to look at the other reasons I mentioned. And ultimately, I feel that this is a continuing to trend towards many NPs becoming RNs again. But people don't really realize that the transition from an RN to an NP is extremely different. I'm not saying different in a role of you taking care of patients, which it is different, but more so that lifestyle, more so what hours you're putting in, how much stress you're taking on, and so many other factors that sometimes it might not be worth it. This video isn't to shed light on, why many NPs hate it and why you shouldn't be it, but it's more so, why are people leaving, and understanding why this might be occurring now as opposed to back then. With so many different changes, there's so many different things happening. During the pandemic, people are wanting to become NPs because they didn't want to do bedside because of how hectic it was. And now roles have reversed, where a lot of people don't want to be NPs and rather go back to bedside because of so many different things happening. And I just wanted to kind of shed light on that and kind of get your perspective and see how you're doing. And definitely comment down below kind of what you're feeling throughout this video, and I would definitely love to hear about it. So let's go to our fifth. So the fifth and final reason, and I think the biggest reason why many nurse practitioners are leaving their roles as providers and going back to becoming bedside RNs, is the liability and responsibility. And this is a huge one. So the reason why I said this is the biggest one, and the reason why I saved it for last, is because this is huge. So you want to think about your responsibility as providers. You're in a provider role, so all the patients you see or all the people underneath you, pretty much a lot of it you take on that liability. And you think about the responsibilities as being a provider, with being able to document, being able to see the patients, be able to prescribe appropriately, have an appropriate treatment plan, go based off of evidence-based, and think about all the other systems of the body that you might not necessarily be taking care of, but accounting for based off your rationale of why you're treating this patient and why you decided to choose a specific treatment plan with one medication over the other. And this is huge because you have to consider that. And now the reason why I say this was the reason why I saved it for last is not only is it important and why many people are leaving, but you have to think about all the other 4 points, and this is kind of leading up to it. So you're looking at decreased job satisfaction, you're looking at high stress, poor hours, less time for yourself, and having to see so many different patients just to be able to hit a certain number based off of what the company wants you to hit. So now you're thinking about, okay, I just need to bang through these numbers of people that I'm going to see. So you're going to start to document a lot faster. You're not going to look over your charts as many times. You're going to see patients a lot faster. And sooner or later, hopefully not, knock on wood, that this doesn't happen to you, but there's a mess up, or you didn't document something that you were supposed to, or you didn't look at a specific lab value when you were prescribing a certain medication, and liability comes, right? And more patients you see, the higher risk of you becoming liable for all of these things, and the higher risk that of you potentially getting into a malpractice suit. Hopefully not to anyone, knock on wood, but that's something we have to think about. And some people aren't willing to risk that, because now you're risking your NP license and your RN license. It's not like, oh, if you get in trouble as an NP, you're fine as RN. No, it's as your NP, your license is gonna you're gonna get in trouble for all of them. So a lot of people are like, nah, screw that. Like, why am I wanting to get in trouble as an NP when I can just go back to Bedside, where there's so many different things and less responsibility and less liability based off of if you're just doing a specific treatment plan and just following especially the directions and making sure you look certain things up, and only having a patient load during that day of 2 patients if you're in the ICU, or 4 patients if you're in the ER, or 5 or 6 patients if you're in Psych, depending on your state and your regulations, obviously. But think about it, like if you're only caring for that amount of patients as opposed to seeing 30 patients and doing all of those things, having more responsibility, more liability, obviously it makes sense for them people to leave. And everyone has to make a specific decision for themselves. I'm not saying, oh, leave being NP because of X, Y, and Z, but it's something you have to think about. And many people that I've talked to that went from being an NP back to the RN, they made these decisions based off of a lot of these 4 or 5 reasons that I mentioned. And it's crazy to think, because a lot of people wanted to get into this role, wanted to become advanced practice nurses, or they wanted to become a provider, and that's the whole reason why maybe some of them became nurses in the first place, because they didn't want to go to medical school, or they didn't want to go to PA school, and they'd rather just become NPs. But they don't realize a lot of how things work. Yes, this doesn't apply to every single job that's out there, but it's something that people will experience in certain roles. And that's where you have to find an opportunity for you, especially if you're experiencing a lot of these things and wanting to get out, is maybe going back to being a bedside RN isn't the worst thing, because now you can make money, have less responsibility, and look out for that job that you want, or look out for the opportunity that's going to best fit your needs. And you have to understand that at the end of the day, you need to protect yourself, not your employer, not anyone. As much as you love them, you need to protect yourselves. And you have to understand that at the end of the day, this is your livelihood. Obviously, if you have other things besides your nursing career going for you, then great. But if it's nursing is your main thing and that's the only income you have, especially if you're a single parent, or if you're the breadwinner, if your spouse is a stay-at-home spouse, or mom or dad, and you're making all of the money, then you have to think about all of these things, because sooner or later you don't want to be put into a situation where you mess up, you forget to order that lab, or you didn't send that prescription and the patient decompensates, or you do something that's going to put yourself at risk because of liability issues, and end up having to kind of fall back on nothing really. Because realistically, as your NP, if you lose your job as an NP, you can always go back to nursing, right? But if that's based off of like if you get fired or you leave your job, which is great. But if you're going to being an NP and something bad happens and now the board suspends your license, it's not just suspending your nurse or NP license, it's suspending your RN license as well. So think about that. And lastly, it's like, I'm not saying that being a nurse practitioner is very, very bad. It has many good reasons, because there's so many different opportunities out there, and there's so many different things you can do as a nurse practitioner. And it's opened up so many doors for me and my wife and my family and everybody around me. But sometimes for that particular person, you have to always just outweigh the risk versus benefits and determine what's best for you. And for me, I love being an NP. But for others, they might not love it. And I'm not saying that they're weak, they're stupid, or they're wrong for going back, because realistically, if I were in a situation like that myself, I would go back to being an RN, because working as an RN in the ED was way too much fun. and I love doing it, and we're working as an RN, and the psych unit is so much fun, and I absolutely loved it, but it was just a different type of role that I wanted to kind of build on, and utilizing those skills that I learned and building on into becoming a provider. So it just depends on everyone. Ultimately, you have to make that choice, and the main reason why I made this video is because I want to open your eyes to certain ideas or certain thought processes or certain things that I think about, because ultimately, as much as I love being an NP, it's not like that for everyone. And if you can watch this video and learn something from it and decide, at least it's going to help you not waste those 2, 3, 4 years of becoming an NP, when you know that you can just stay as an RN, love your life, and do other things to build different opportunities out there. Because frankly, as RNs, we make a lot of money, and we have so much opportunity within that money to build onto other things. It's just a matter of finding out what's going to be your happiness beyond just nursing, because at the end of the day, one thing happens to our nursing license, we don't want to be screwed up to a point where it's going to affect our pay, where you can just build something on top of it, and if nursing goes down, at least you'll have that other thing, or if that other thing goes down, at least you'll have your nursing license. So think about it. And I know I'm rambling now, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Comment down below on what you loved about this video, what you love about my channel, or if you have any questions, please feel free to comment, and I'll be more than welcome to help you out. Have a wonderful day, stay safe, until next time, bye!